real agenda of educating our black children, in actuality, what they educate us with actually dumbs us down. We were put here as natural creators and inventors, but what they educate us with out here in the regular public school system is not teaching you to ever get ahead. It's not many of us that get ahead. Some of us, may get a scholarship here and there, but for the very most part, we don't get a chance to get ahead. They don't teach you anything about money. They don't teach you anything about things that's going to propel you forward. Even in school, I think the only thing that we can really use is the mathematical skill.
And math is simply a way to code for logical, repeatable patterns. So it's remarkable that math can describe the universe at all, except that math is a perfectly logical system, and so is the universe. Put them together, of course. It's a marriage made in heaven.
Very much like music, right? Math, music, that kind of connection.
So that still is nothing about money or how to pay a bill and, how to move forward, how not to fall into debt and things of that nature.
That's interesting because I think there's no straight up agenda, because we are now living into this society where we claim to be raceless, to be genderless, to be everyone's a person. There are no differences. Everyone gets a trophy at Little League. Everyone gets all of this stuff until you don't. So there's no real agenda. If there's an agenda, it's simple, fall in line. Do as I say. Whatever the powers that be is, because we really don't care about your education, to the most part. If there is an actual tinfoil hat, big brother type figure, I think the agenda should be the parents need to take more control. The parents need to jump in and say, hey, this is good for my kids or whatever. And quite honestly, the parents need to have a sit down and talk with themselves and say, your kids aren't superstars yet. They will be. If you do your job right, they will be. But you don't just come out of the womb superstars. We want to show these kids the way to go. However, if there is an agenda to these kids, and unfortunately, it's just something that kind of goes back to that cell phone slavery I was just talking about, it's fall in line. Do as we say. This is the norm. You live with this. And if you can break your kids to that, you'll be doing them the greatest favor, because show that individuality. Show that you don't have to be like everyone else. You can be different. That's fine. I don't care if you are whatever different means to you. But if you're showing your own personality, that's really what should count. Now, sometimes you're not as smart as the other guy. That's okay. Sometimes you are not as athletically talented as the next person. That's okay too. Are you willing to be that? Are you willing to train? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to be a good level of guidance for that? Now, that means more than just following in line. So try not to fall in line too much. I mean, be a good person and all that other good stuff, but just don't do as we tell you. If that is the agenda, I think that's what it is. Just fall in line. But you don't have to be in line to stand out.
Historically, the education of black children in America has been left to be desired. Education as a compulsory demand on the people has only been around for about 200 years. First, it was introduced with the idea 100 years prior to that by Thomas Jefferson, that there needed to be an education system for the people and their children in this country, and it got ignored for nearly 100 years. It gets picked up later. You get a lot of traction in Massachusetts with Horace Mann, And as we are kept from the education as black people, because education equals agency, the enslaved don't get the education that they need because they'll be too empowered to do something about their problem, and their problem being in bond. You can't beat somebody down if they have their wits about them. And education would equal them getting their wits and wanting more for their children. But instead you put a heavy burden on somebody with thinking about being in bond. And that is a huge leap. But if you notice, post-Reconstruction and through Reconstruction, the proliferation of education for the black person happens almost immediately. It snaps. There's a demand. We seek. We build institutions. We work on things ourselves. And education is not just classroom education. There is the education of the body, an education of task and skills. So today in America, we're 73% of what the predominant culture is doing. 22.6% of us have bachelor's degrees in Black America, whereas opposed there's closer to 32% for the nation at large in the predominant culture. I'll say something that brings to mind is the miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Is a callback to the miseducation of the black child. That's a paraphrase, but it's Carter G. Woodson. And his analysis of there needed to be not only the educational piece, but the education for the soul as well. And I think that it's happening in pockets all about us, but there's no concerted effort nationwide for it to happen. There's my grandmother, there's your grandmother, there's this group that we're a part of over here, but we're disparate and separate, and social media lets us see movements and join, but that education is not filtered where you can pick up the big chunks that you want everybody to get. Those bodies of knowledge are out there and available. The internet makes it available. And the black child isn't responsible for themselves. It is their parents, it's their grandparents, it's the adults that have to ensure that the child is educated. I came about in a time where my parents are kids from the civil rights era. They're little kids during that time. And so I benefit from the synergy of that. I benefit from having a civil rights activist for a grandmother. I benefit by her network and what those people talked about. I benefit. And so now I'm starting to be in more of the, I won't say middle age, but the moving toward the senior age. Not because I'm an elder yet, but that's my next stop. And so it's my job to say to my children, or when I say my children, I'm not speaking of my individual ones, I'm talking about the collective group. So that's one of the reasons I like being around kids and being able to share the educational moments in the schools. I liked being able to be the listening ear for the education of the black child in community service roles I've been in. And they're informal roles often that make the big differences. It's not just the formal education for the black child.